There she is. Miss Ivana Peña. Good evening, ma'am.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm on a phone call. Sorry. But I'm here.
Good to hear from you. We got about a minute to go here. So I think it's today, right? The Spurs are on right now, I think.
Is that our cue, sir? Is that our cue?
They play at all times during the day. You know, there's no prime time. It's all the time.
Yeah. Just saying. Okay. Here we go. Good evening, everyone. The special called meeting of the South San Antonio Independent School District Board of Trustees will now come to order. Today is Thursday, August 13th, 2020, and the time is 6 p.m. Michelle, if we can have a roll call, please.
Stacy Alderete.
Present.
Gilbert Rodriguez.
Present.
Connie Prado.
Present.
Shirley Ibarra Peña.
Present.
Homer Flores. Mr. Homer Flores, I believe I saw him. Kevin Rasco.
Present.
Veronica Barba.
Present.
When Mr. Holmes jumps back on, we'll make sure that he's there, Michelle. Okay. Thank you. We do have a quorum. The meeting is now called to order. If we can all participate in the Pledge of Allegiance, Texas Pledge, our call to action, and our prayer. Ms. Collier, thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible. Please bow your head in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we are meeting here today to continue working for our students and our families. Give us the guidance to make the best decisions for our community. Please watch over us and keep us safe and healthy so we may meet again. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Call to action. All students will enjoy empowering them to make decisions while living their lives in the future created.
Thank you very much, Ms. Collier. Our first item on the agenda is citizens to be heard. Mr. Rasco.
At this time, I do not see any citizens to be heard.
Chair recognizing that there are no citizens to be heard, we'll move to the next item. Thank you, Mr. Rasco, which is discussion and possible action. Item number 1, discussion and possible action to approve the election order. At this time,
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, ma'am. Real quick, Ms. Alderete, board members, you should have been able to view this document on Board Book. So at this time, the chair will entertain a motion. Ms. Alderete?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the election and also to include the polling sites to remain the same as they were in the election of 2018.
I have a motion by Ms. Alderete. Do I have a second?
I need to step into that for a little bit.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. O'Hanlon. We'll afford some feedback from our council here, and then we'll afford the opportunity for Ms. Alderete to amend the motion if she chooses.
All right. Just FYI, this is, we have to, and because of provisions of Texas Education Code, we need to enter into what they call a joint election order. The joint election order is going to require that we conduct our elections in conjunction with basically with the county, because it's a presidential year. It's not only the county; it's about 80 other legal entities or something of that nature, throughout Bexar County. There's a new procedure in place that's been in place for 2 years, which is called a countywide election. What that means is that any citizen of Bexar County can, presentment of suitable identification, can vote in any polling place, any place in Bexar County, whether it's in our district or not, whether it's on election day or in any early voting. Because of COVID and things of that nature, and because the county has to come up with election locations for not just us, but for every other entity, and they're trying to work with everybody to find suitable places to hold elections. After the last conversation with the county election administrator, we have had conversations. They are going to try as best they can to have elections at the locations, at the polling places that are customary, that they've always used. That's just kind of people get used to going to where they are, but there's no guarantee of doing that. One is the election order does not contain locations. That would be in the joint election agreement. So I recommend that we don't designate, just the first thing on the election order, we don't designate polling places, and we allow the county elections administrator to designate those. With respect to the election order as it is currently drafted does not contain specific polling places either, because they have not been settled. They're still working on those in terms of that. The joint election agreement delegates that authority to the county election administrator to do that. We have had conversations with them, like I said, about having it to the greatest extent possible in the customary polling places. They want to do that too, but they haven't concluded all of the arrangements, and some of them may be not be able to be used, not because they want to change them, but because locations with respect to some of these have to be, if we're going to maintain social distancing as it's required, we're going to have essentially, it's better to have in November where the weather might be bad. We may want larger facilities, larger rooms, if you will, so that we can space out the voting machines. So they're trying to work out all of that as much as possible. That being said, Ms. Alderete, they are trying to have, to the greatest extent possible, familiar locations. There's going to be enough disruption anyway on this, so they want people to be comfortable where they're voting.
Thank you for that, Mr. Kevin. So we've gotten feedback from our legal counsel regarding Ms. Alderete's motion. Legal counsel has made a recommendation. So I'll allow Ms. Alderete to ask questions regarding her motion, and then if she moves forward, we'll get a second, and then we'll have discussion amongst trustees.
I guess I can just ask Kevin here. So what would be the problem? You're saying, so what I'm kind of getting or understanding is because for the most part, our polls are in schools, correct?
To the extent that they're in schools, they will continue to, they're in our schools, I'm pretty sure they're going to want to continue to use our schools. Okay. To the extent that we have previously had them in that school in the cafeteria or something of that nature, they may want to move to the gymnasium because it's it's more square footage, and we can spread the voting machines out a little. So we've expressed to them that we are perfectly willing, in fact, anxious to have our polling places at our locations within the district, and all of the traditional locations. They have probably enough machines to do that. It's simply a matter of whether they can get the rooms big enough in order to do social distancing and with respect to that. This is going to be probably a big turnout election. The governor's given us The governor's given us an extra 6 days or something on the front end to hopefully spread out election day. But everybody's anticipating large turnout, so we're trying to make it as convenient and as undangerous as we possibly can. So those are the considerations.
Thank you, Ms. O'Hanlon. If I may, Ms. Aldrete, I think before we move into discussion, I think what Ms. Aldrete is asking is if the motion, we heard your recommendation, Ms. O'Hanlon, but I think what Ms. Aldrete is asking is if her motion, I guess, is legal and she's able to make that motion, having heard your recommendation.
She can, well, the location of the voting sites the way that we have set up the order shouldn't be in the election order. If we're going to do it, be in the joint election agreement. So I would recommend we clearly not put it in the election order. The joint election agreement has more about specifics about the polling.
Mr. President?
Give me one. I think we'll get to the discussion here in a minute, trustees. I just want to make sure that I just want Ms. Aldrete to get from legal counsel on whether her motion is legal or not. Then I'll ask for a second, and then we'll go back to the discussion.
I just want to know if you can hear me. Anybody can hear me?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear you, Mr. Flores.
Okay. Okay, good.
Okay. Yes, sir.
All right.
Ms. Aldrete?
So is it legal or is it not?
Is it legal to put in there? The answer is that if we put them in the election order and they can't get the spaces, then we're going to have to go back and amend the election order. All right. The problem is that there are every year. You saw that if you look at the next item, the joint election agreement, there's pages of entities, and everybody's got to work together on this because everybody adopts everybody else's polling places. And I just don't think we can responsibly dictate for everybody else in the county where the polling places are.
So, may I?
Yeah, no, I understand the recommendation from Mr. O'Hanlon. I'm not hearing that it's illegal. What I'm hearing as a chair is that he's recommending that we don't do that, but clearly we are here to entertain the South San Antonio Independent School District election. So I don't think that it would be out of bounds to submit the board's position tonight.
So I'm going to go ahead and keep my motion then, if it's not illegal.
Can you repeat the motion, please?
My motion would be to that we approve the election to also include the polling sites to remain the same as in the election of 2018.
Okay.
I have a motion by Ms. Aldrete. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Flores. Michelle, if we can have a roll call, please. I'm sorry. I have a first and a second. We will go with discussion, and I believe Ms. Barba had waved her hand first. Ms. Barba? You're on mute, Ms. Barba.
Okay, I have a question for Mr. O'Hanlon. Now, I know the last time we had a meeting and Jackie said we could submit a wish list. Can I submit a wish list still?
Sure, we have submitted to her the notion that we want to. She's got the list of voting places from the last election. So okay. That we want to maintain. We have told her that we want to maintain, to the extent possible, those voting locations. That's what that was the board's position, and we are trying to. We're trying to do that for you. The issue is can we command it? And the answer is, in my opinion, no. We can do the best we can to accomplish that, but it's going to take the cooperation with all the other legal entities. So we're trying to get that, but we have to do it in conjunction with all the other entities.
Okay, because I have three on that wish list that I have, and I'd like to submit that as well. I don't know if it's on the list that y'all have, but I have a wish list.
And what is that? What is that?
The Salvation Army that's on Military Drive. And then there's a South San Community Center on Quintana Road. And this was a police station on Mayfield, a South Side substation on Mayfield.
So clarification here. I'm gonna interject. Allow me a second, Ms. Prado and Ms. Barba. I just want clarification here that we are not submitting.
It's a wish list.
Right, I understand. Allow me a second, Ms. Barba. We are acting as an entity, a governance body for South San Antonio Independent School District. So the action that we're taking tonight is South San Antonio Independent School District as a board. We're not here to entertain individual motions for individual polling sites. That's not the way it works, right? So we can certainly have the discussion and you can make the comments that you want to make, but there's a motion and a second, and once we take action, then that's going to be the will of the board. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that.
Mr. President, I have a question.
1 second, Mr. Flores. Ms. Barbara, did you have any further comments?
No, sir. That'll be it.
I believe Ms. Prado was next. Ms. Prado?
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. I think the motion is to approve the election order. Although I didn't see, there are no polling sites listed, no early voting polling sites and no election day polling sites. There's nothing on the election order. That comes later. So the motion that we're going to be making is to approve this document, which is the election order. But before I approve this document, there are some corrections that need to be made. I don't know if anybody's read it, but I did. The document doesn't have page numbers, so I'm going to reference the paragraph. It's paragraph 9. It talks about the early voting by personal appearance. If you go to the very last part of it, it says that the early voting clerk at the office of the Bexar County Elections Administrator is address is 203 West Nueva, Suite 3.61, San Antonio 78207. The address should actually say 1103 South Florida Street, Suite 11, 78207, because they moved offices.
So, give me that address, please.
I stand corrected. It's not Flores. It's Frio Street.
1103 South Frio Street.
Right, Suite 100, 78207.
78207, Suite 100.
Right, and then also if you go to the Spanish version, it has that same address on Nueva, and that is not correct. They are now on Frio Street.
Okay.
So I'd like to make motion that we approve the election order with the 2 corrections as mentioned for approval. So I don't know if that's, unless Ms. Alderete, if you just want to add the corrections on there. But I'm assuming that Ms. Alderete's motion is to approve the order, because we have to approve this, but she's asking for an addition, which is to allow us to have the same sites as 2018, which is kind of like a wish list, because there's nothing in here that addresses polling sites. Really, that doesn't come till later. So I guess Ms. Alderete's is a wish list. Ms. Barba's is a wish list. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Kell-Allen, when she came, she said that we were allowed to submit a wish list. We're not taking an action on it because we don't have a right to act on it. She is the ultimate authority that decides what polling sites will be named or not. So I think there's 2 different items here. This is the contract itself, or the election order itself, and then all the others that we would like to see, whether it be the sites from the 18 election or also the sites that Ms. Barba has recommended?
Okay, so
Thank you for that. Give me 1 second, Mr. O'Hanlon. So thank you for that, Ms. Prado. So either Ms. Prado, you can make a substitute motion, or we can allow Ms. Alderete to amend her motion to include those corrections.
Okay, I'll leave that. Ms. Alderete, would you like to amend the motion to include the correction?
I'm sorry, I was having trouble with my screen. Yes, I'd like to go ahead and just amend the motion to make the corrections in the election order itself.
Okay.
And keep everything else the way I had it.
Okay, I have an amended motion by Ms. Alderete to add the corrections that Ms. Prado pointed out as far as the addresses. Do I have a second?
Discussion, Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I need clarification if I may.
I was next.
Right.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Flores. I apologize.
Right. So hold on one second. Let me manage the meeting here, guys. So Ms. Prado, I afforded you the opportunity to make your comments. You said that you were finished. We afforded Ms. Alderete the opportunity to amend her motion. She has. I will take a second on her amended motion, and then we will open it back up for discussion.
Okay, I second.
Second by Mr. Flores. Is there any additional discussion on the motion and the second?
Yes.
I just
Mr. Flores, we'll go back around to you, Ms. Prado. Mr. Flores?
Okay. All right. So on the Southwest ISD website, they have the listed polling sites already for early voting and for election day. Well, they have early voting. And so I'm just wondering why we don't have that same information, because then it should be attached to today's or the documents that we're passing. I'm trying to understand why it's so difficult. And then according to Ms. Barba, there's a list out there. So who submitted that list? Or I don't remember voting on the list. And so those are some of the questions and concerns I have right now on that.
Thank you for that, Mr. Flores. Mr. Rasco?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. I'm reading the election order, and paragraph 5 states that we are entering, it says the South San Independent School District election precincts and polling places established for this election, including early voting, and the county election precincts in which eligible voters may vote at the polling places shall be contained in the list of election precincts and polling places to be established by the Bexar County Elections Administrator in accordance with the joint election agreement to be adopted by the South San Independent School District and the Bexar County Elections Administrator. To me, that says that this is not the appropriate place to put language in about establishing polling places. So I would ask that we not amend the election order except for the change of address to 1103 South Frio. As Mrs. Prado pointed out, it does have the incorrect address on it at this point. But I think that this is not the election order is not the appropriate place to add that language. And if we do move forward with voting to add that language, I would like it please specifically spelled out, because it seems a little nebulous and globular right now and not specific. I'd like to see exactly what language we're talking about amending, changing, or adding to this document before we take a vote.
Thank you for that, Mr. Roscoe. Are there any other, Ms. Prado? Yeah, I'll circle back around you. I'll take my first couple of minutes here. So thank you for that, Mr. Rocco, Mr. Rasco, some very good feedback. I also did read the agreement. There are other administrative corrections that need to be made, specifically in the one that Mr. Rasco pointed out, section 5. If you read the Spanish paragraph underneath that as well, it's also referring to the attachment A that is not in the English portion. So as we all recall, there was a lot of discussion regarding the attachment A's, and there was a takeaway by Ms. Jacqueline Cal-Allen from the Bexar County elections to provide those for the board members to review, to have historical documents to compare. it's my position that had we have received that, then probably this discussion would be a lot shorter than what we're having now. However, it's a good discussion. We want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So I'm of the position, one, I have a question for legal counsel, is simply the Board of Trustees is wanting to state their position on where the polling sites are preferred, because, and you all know me, all I care about right now is our South San Antonio pin. There could be 3,000 other, and bless her heart, Miss Jackie Cal-Allen, bless her heart, but I'm only worried about, and we should only be worried about, the South San Antonio Independent School District election, right? That's the business that we're charged with here this evening to consider. So I'm of the position that I have a question for legal counsel. If the election order is not the appropriate place, where and when is the appropriate place for the Board of Trustees to state their position and indicate their preferred polling sites? The Board of Trustees, not individual trustees, the Board of Trustees, because we're here taking action as a governance body.
All right. Let me try and explain the circumstances in which we are operating. This is a joint.
I understand, Mr. O'Halloran. If you could just answer my question, where would Ms. Aldereta's portion of the motion be entered on the Board of Trustees stating their position on their preferred polling locations? Where would that take place?
It would in neither place. All right. And let me explain that. It is not illegal to put in a preference to have a preference for polling places, but when you have a countywide election, which we have right now, you must have joint election sites with the county. All right. If you do not, then you must pay for putting polling places, voting machines, not just in every location in the district. You got to put them in every location in the county, and there aren't enough voting machines to do that. Nobody's got enough to do that. So we are compelled by circumstances to end up in an agreement with the county. That's how a joint election works. We have every ability to state our preference, and we've expressed that to the county. But I don't think we can demand it, because we're not running this election. We don't have the machines, we don't have the staff, and we don't have the money to run this election if we're going to run it as our own. So it compels us to cooperate with the county. We have every right to ask for that, but we can't just say we're going to have these polling places. We don't have the ability to do that.
Right. I see Dr. Puig wants to be recognized. One last statement here, and then I'll recognize our superintendent. So I appreciate your feedback, Mr. O'Halloran. Personally, I've been compelled to do a lot of things during my duration on the board to date, right? And I think that I've showed that we're not just a rubber stamp, quote unquote, things just because that's the way they've been. So you said multiple times that we have let Bexar County elections know. Who's we? When did that happen? And what's the process for that happening? I think the board, as you can see, has a lot of interest in that. So you've mentioned multiple times that we have communicated with Bexar County elections. We have told them who, when, where, and why. Can you answer that for me, please?
Yes, sir. After the last conversation that we had, and given the fact that there was a preference expressed at the last meeting where we had the presentation, I called the Bexar County election administrator and told that and expressed the board's preference to maintaining the polling places. I did it. Okay. Do I have a signed election agreement? No. The answer is no. I was told, as you were told at the board meeting, basically the same thing, that she would endeavor to the best of her ability to do that. We don't have a final that we don't have final action on those polling places at this point.
Thank you for that, Ms. O'Hanlon. Let the record reflect that the chair recognizes Mr. O'Hanlon is not the appointed elections officer by South San Antonio Independent School District. Dr. Puig?
Thank you, Chairman Rodriguez and trustees. I do want to make sure as we work together as a team here that we do allow the administration to weigh in on this. And specifically, I want to say on the front end, I'm excited about the conversation we're having. But remember, we need to make sure that we adhere to Texas Education Code 11.051, and the superintendent shall be afforded the opportunity to make a recommendation. And so we haven't done that yet. So let me make a recommendation, and then I'd like to weigh in on why we're making that recommendation, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Please, Dr. Puig.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to recommend the approval of the election order with the edits and corrections as mentioned by Mrs. Prado. And with that, I'd like to call on Jeff Baum to sort of explain the administration's position in making sure that we follow this process systematically moving forward. Mr. Baum?
Yes, good evening, Chairman Rodriguez, members of the board, Dr. Puig. Thank you for the opportunity to weigh in on this item. As Mr. Raskow mentioned, Article 5 of the election order does indicate that polling locations will be determined at a later point. In visiting with Ms. Callanan and the elections office about this, the way the process works, and this is a change for everybody. This is a new process, but the way this process works is there actually has to be a determination of what elections are going to be contested. If we have a district election that will not be contested, and there's a candidate there, then as you guys know, that member becomes there's no candidacy necessary, and that member becomes a trustee on our board of trustees at that point. But the elections that are going to be contested, they will be given preference. As Mr. O'Hanlon said, there are a limited number of polling machines. There's certainly an adequate number of voting machines, and there will be preference given to the Board of Trustees recommendation of locations. That being said, the county elections office is already weighing in, or they are asking for district input on facilities that will be available to use. And then as they look across the county to determine what locations are going to be used, they'll make sure that those facilities are available, and it will be the Board of Trustees recommendation as to what locations are going to be used. But Article 5 does clearly state that list will be created by the elections office at a later point in time. So once we determine which races we will have an election in, that's when the election contract will be done. That's when we establish polling locations, voting locations, early voting dates, hours, and times, and then that will come before this board again to be approved.
And let me add one more thing. Thank you, Mr. Baum. Remember, too, when we talked with Jackie on the 22nd, once those players are confirmed after the filing deadline, once we know who's all in, we are going to have an entity meeting to fight for our polling sites. Remember that. So everyone will come together and have that opportunity to have their say and really position ourselves for advocating for those polling sites that we are familiar with historically here. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, trustees.
Thank you for that, Dr. Quaid. 1 second, Ms. Prado, are there any other trustees for the first round? I believe everybody's had an opportunity on their first round, right? I think Ms. Alderete has not. Ms. Alderete? Ms. Alderete, you're on mute.
Thank you for the explanation, Mr. Baum, and the recommendation, Dr. Puig. It makes sense now as to further down, we're going to come back together. It's going to come before the board. It makes sense. But I have a question for legal. Let's take a couple steps back because we've been asking for the attachments to the last time around. And for some reason, we can't find them. They're gone. I don't know. But he just said that they looked at that. So do they have it or do they not have it? Because I'd like to see it.
I never saw the attachments. What I did see, and they were in the board, packet last time, were from the two prior elections. copies of the newspaper notice of the polling places. Those newspaper notices were drawn from that exhibit. So do I have the actual physical exhibit? The answer is no, but the newspaper notice was drawn from that exhibit, and so that's where and those were distributed.
And Mr. O'Hanlon, is there a reason you can't find those attachments? I mean,
I never had the attachment. At the time that we consistent with prior practices, I drafted an election order and sent it down for submission to the board. The board approved it in each case for the number of for a number of cycles that we've had this. The attachment was attached later after it was negotiated with the county. This is what we've done historically. So I was never given a copy of the polling places. That got worked out.
Miss Jackie said that she was going to come back with that, and she has not. Is that correct?
I have not seen the exhibit, but okay. I am confident that the exhibit, that the newspaper article has the polling places. That's the purpose of that. It is drawn.
I have the list.
Order.
Okay.
Right. Ms. Aldrete, if I may really quick before I recognize Ms. Ibarra-Peña, I will certainly follow up with our superintendent to see if we can provide those documents for the Board of Trustees.
Okay.
So I can certainly do that for you, Ms. Aldrete.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay. So at this time, Ms. Ibarra-Peña, you are recognized.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Just one question. When is the deadline for candidates to submit, for election?
For the election, there are two deadlines. One of them is the 17th for all of those trustees that are running for a 4-year terms, and the 20th for the one candidate that is running for an unexpired term.
Right, which is District 1, if I recall correctly. Right.
Oh, okay. So
that's in the order.
Okay, that's Mandy's district, correct? That was Mandy's that Ms. Barbara's taking.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so that means I don't have to submit anything, right, for running, because I'm on the 4-year term.
That's correct, Ms. Ibarra-Peña. You are correct.
Okay.
You're not up for election.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Prado?
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. I think I was trying to remember. I think the backup that we got was the 100. It must have been 10 pages showing all of the polling sites that were used at the March primary and at the runoff. That's the only list I can think of that was provided to the board, and it had like 5 to 10 pages of polling sites. But that's the only one I can remember. But with that being said, I would like to make a substitute motion if I could. And I make a motion that we approve the recommendation of the superintendent.
Well, Ms. Prado, if you'll allow me, after Ms. Aldrete hearing all the feedback and questions, I would like to afford her the opportunity to amend her motion first. And if she doesn't, then you can certainly make a substitute motion. We've had a lot of discussion. She's gotten feedback from legal counsel. So I would afford her an opportunity to amend her motion if she wishes. Ms. Aldrete? And also hearing the recommendation from our superintendent.
So due to the information given by Mr. Baum and the recommendation of the superintendent, I'd like to amend my motion that we approve the election order and go along with all of the recommended corrections.
Thank you, Ms. Aldrete. I have a motion by Ms. Aldrete. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Flores. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Michelle, if we can have a roll call, please.
Stacy Aldrete.
Yes.
Gilbert Rodriguez.
Yes.
Connie Prado.
Yes.
Shirley Ibarra Peña.
I just need a clarification, Mr. Rodriguez. This is the amended what Ms. Adarete said with the recommendation of Dr. Puig as well?
Yes, and also including the edits that Ms. Prado identified. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yes.
Homer Flores.
Yes.
Kevin Rasco.
Yes.
Veronica Barba.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, board members. The next item on the agenda is number 2, discussion and possible action to approve the Bexar County Joint Agreement. Board members, this was uploaded into Board Book for your consideration and review. At this time, the chair will entertain any motions.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Ms. Prado?
I'd like to hear the recommendation of the superintendent.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Puig?
Thank you, Chairman Rodriguez. Thank you, trustees. I would like to recommend the joint agreement for the Bexar County election moving forward. And I just want to be clear that this joint election just gets us a seat at the table. It tells everyone that we have called an election. And then once that's done, we have the seat at the table. After the filing deadline next week, we will see who is left standing, and then we'll move forward with executing the contract with all those polling sites and so forth after the entity meeting. So I'd like to, again, recommend that we approve the Bexar County Joint Agreement as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Quinn. With that said, I'll make a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation.
I have a motion by Ms. Prado. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Barba. Was that Ms. Barba?
Alderete.
Ms. Alderete. Michelle, we can have a roll call.
Stacy Alderete.
Yes.
Gilbert Rodriguez.
Yes.
Connie Prado.
Yes.
Shirley Ibarra Peña.
Yes.
Homer Flores.
Yes.
Kevin Rasco.
Yes.
Veronica Barba.
Yes.
Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is adjournment. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion by Ms. Adrete, a second by Ms. Ibarra Peña. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned at 6:41. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Board members, thank you for your participation. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
President
Good
Rodriguez,
night and have a nice weekend, everyone.
I will make it, Mr. President, I'll make the changes and get those done to the superintendent not later than 9 in the morning to conform the address.